FutureDad 57. Mass immigration is worse than war. Quote, evil ideas have to rely on evil means. They cannot appeal to human virtues, they have to appeal to human weakness. End quote. Ayn Rand. Since 1997, native British people have endured an unprecedented quadruple attack on their wealth, their neighbourhoods, their right to protest, and worst of all, the safety of their children. The main perpetrator in every case is the state, assisted by its taxpayer-funded shock troops, third world immigrants. The attacks are as follows. First, the legal and illegal importation of at least 250,000 low-skilled third world men from alien, typically Islamic cultures every year. Second, the network of predominantly Pakistani Muslim men who brutalize and sexually assault tens of thousands of vulnerable white girls for over 3 decades and counting. Third, the relentless gaslighting by the political, media and managerial class that the first 2 attacks were not happening, and the demonization for complaining about either. Fourth, the predation of the working and middle classes via the highest tax burden since the Second World War to fund the financial havoc wrought by successive governments, whilst claiming that mass immigration is good for GDP. I have described elements of this quadruple attack in several other essays, and although the mass immigration itself is not the root cause, because other foundational conditions and choices came before it, it led to the other 3. So in this essay, I will outline why mass immigration is more potent and therefore more permanently injurious for the 4 nations of Britain and their cultures than war itself. By war, I refer to full-scale, conventional, military attack by a foreign aggressor. Here are the top 13 reasons in increasing order of societal harm why, in the aggregate, mass third world immigration is worse than war and it should be ceased immediately. 1. Illegal immigration has become more attractive than legal. 2. It hasn't increased the GDP per capita since 2005. 3. Illegal migrants receive preferential healthcare compared to natives. 4. It is bio-quantitative easing. 5. Migrants are legally incentivized to live on your taxes. 6. It robs British teenagers of opportunity. 7. Mass third world immigration is an accepted military bioweapon. 8. Third world immigrants are mostly military-aged men. 9. Third world immigrants have a higher criminality. 10. A culture of lies and corruption engulfs our society. 11. It is demographic replacement. 12. It endangers us more than the twin nuclear attack or a conventional war. 13. In conventional war, people fight for their families and neighbours. 1. Illegal immigration has become more attractive than legal. Despite appearances, it is no simple task to turn up at a UK passport control as a law-abiding person and go through the steps to gain the right of stay in Britain. Legal immigrants must wait in line and of course illegals do not. Legal immigrants must navigate state bureaucracy, illegals do not. Legal immigrants must pay their dues and hefty costs of processing their visas, illegals do not. Conversely, illegal migrants get a panoply of different goodies when they arrive, including free mobiles, hotel stays, prepaid debit cards, free dental and free healthcare. Legals do not. Legal migrants, when they notice this, are made to feel like fools for following the rules. Any desirable legal immigrants are conditioned early to hate our country for its failing bureaucracy and porous borders. They tell their friends and family and the word spreads. Future legal immigrants are incentivized to break the law. The net result is, the weaker the border security, the more illegals will arrive on our shores. 2. It hasn't increased the GDP per capita since 2005. The economic cover for mass immigration was, for decades, to boost GDP growth and the casual anti-white insult of doing the jobs the natives wouldn't. Even this, the last bastion of defence of globalists, is proven false. GDP per capita, the figure that matters, has stagnated to around an average of $45,000 per year since 2005. See the chart. The amazing thing about this stalling growth is that it excludes the deliberate undercounting of population. Supermarket, mobile phone, and sewage company estimates of British population are approximately 80 to 100 million. That is a 25% increase in the denominator of the GDP per capita formula. So the GDP per capita could be as low as 80% of what is claimed by official figures. In effect, Britain's economy may have stalled since 2002 when mass immigration really took off. 3. Illegal migrants receive preferential healthcare compared to natives. In the NHS's 987 Inclusion Health Scheme, there are special categories of patients who are fast-tracked through hospital emergency departments, such as in hospitals under the management of NHS North Central London. One of those categories is undocumented migrants. In other words, people who have no legal right to be in the UK. The website admits that patients from the general public may struggle to attend such hospitals because of the long delays waiting to be seen. In other words, it is this policy's intent that illegal migrants are not subject to such delays. So, not only are we medically treating patients who shouldn't be here, we are giving them a better service than citizens who have paid into the system their whole lives. This is both a blatant corruption and theft. Theft from the taxpayer in the service of suicidal empathy for the third world pets. 4. It is bioquantitative easing. See FutureDad 19, The Death of Customer Service, FutureDad 2, Lies, Life's Deep Water, and FutureDad 11, Why Government is So Dangerous, where I detail why they need to use foreign human biomass to contain government-caused inflation. The game plan all along was to throw unwitting black and brown bodies at the inflation caused by the slow welfare collapse, originally caused by feminism. So the unaccountable criminal gang in Britain's Treasury Department prefer to bring a Deliveroo driver from Pakistan because he, in theory, immediately pays taxes and stops wage inflation. A double win for the Treasury and the country, we are told. Reality. The reality is different. The data shown is from the Danish Ministry of Finance. Third world immigration is a net deficit to the public purse. Migrant Mohammed is more likely to participate in the black market and pay no taxes. He's more likely to receive welfare benefit. And then, to top it off, the data will show he is more likely to sexually assault your daughter. 5. Migrants are legally incentivized to live on your taxes. It is axiomatic that no human has a right to a good life, far less those who have never paid a penny into the system. To carry out that proposition, you have to make slaves of everyone. Yet, of the 180,000 Somalis in Britain, 72% are in social housing compared to 17% in the wider population. One must ask the question, why are they here? There are three main reasons why someone, generally, would live in another country. 1. An economic migrant with special skills. Considering the backward state of Somalia, this is as close to being impossible as to be completely irrelevant. 2. A partner or family member. There are not thousands of Brits partnering up with Somalians and bringing them back. So again, This is an insignificant number. It is instead chain and family migration of Somalians themselves, en masse. 3. Fleeing war or natural disaster. There is no war or natural disaster in Somalia. It is simply a failed state. So this reason is inapplicable. There are no legitimate asylum-seeking refugees from Somalia. Yet they are here, in their tens of thousands. The permissive, liberal UK welfare and legal system brought them here under Article 14 of the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It states that a refugee is a person in another country, quote, at risk of persecution in his or her country, end quote. Persecution is anything you want it to be. Practice. In practice, what happens is this. A Somalian is told by a friend or family member who has already escaped to Britain to come here and claim you are persecuted. He then travels to the closest port of entry, France. He climbs into a dinghy with 30 other men like him. If he faces difficulty in the English Channel, the RNLI will help him. He is encouraged to ditch his passport into the sea on the way over. He doesn't need to do anything else but claim asylum when he lands, and he gets a hotel room, a mobile phone and a prepaid debit card, all for free. The dinghy is then sent back to France to collect the next batch. You may at this point ask, why is this allowed? I thought you could only seek asylum in the closest safe country. As Amnesty states, someone may wish to travel further to seek asylum for various reasons, including that she, he or they have connections or family there or do not feel safe somewhere else. This loophole in Amnesty's own view entitles swarms of third world crooks to invade our country and steal our tax money. That is why we must leave the UN and the UNDHR with immediate effect. What will the international community do? Arrest us? Embargo Scotch whisky, gangsters pasties and sarcasm? Most native Brits are willing to take that risk. Recall that politicians of all stripes were happy to breach UNESCO's Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights, regarding medical consent and bodily autonomy during COVID. See FutureDad 35, COVID Part 3, The Lies of Lockdown. LOL. 6. It robs British teenagers of opportunity. Most teenagers go through a phase of being a bit lazy and work shy, especially when they are over-technologised. They need the opportunity to pull themselves up by their bootstraps via the harsh lessons of real, paid work. Interrupting that process with infinite bummalians robs them of their dignity and their ability to be useful. Often the very things a struggling teenage boy needs to help him grow up and be independent. Basic wage, food or service industry work was never supposed to be populated by third world immigrants. It was supposed to be a training ground for our future productive citizens. 7. Mass third world immigration is an accepted military bioweapon. There have been 3 public shakedowns threatened against Europe in the recent past. 1. In 2016, Turkey's President Erdogan threatened to send 3.6 million migrants into Europe if the EU didn't give them more money. 2. Former Libyan leader Gaddafi threatened to turn Europe black with African migrants if he wasn't paid €5 billion a year. 3. ISIS threatened to flood Europe with immigrants, tacitly ensuring many active and motivated jihadists would be in that group. Why were these such chilling threats? Because they would very likely achieve the ambition of making European towns and cities dangerous, crime-ridden and unlivable. The threat was made because it was credible. All 3 actors above had the influence to do it. And like any mass casualty weapon of war, it would be devastating. In the end, the threats were not carried out, despite, we are told, them not having been paid. Curious. Yet here we are, rolling out the red carpet for Wakandan architects and astronomers, and suffering a Groundhog Day of boat landings as a result. Roughly 50,000 in Starmer's first year. It was 73 in Australia in 2023. No, not 73,000, 73. So it's a choice. In military terms, it's no different to an amphibious assault every day of the year. In simple language, the assault is on us and on our homeland is deliberate and by our own leaders. 8. Third world immigrants are mostly military-age men. Take a glance at any picture of a large enough illegal alien pedalo or a battalion of them pushing through a hole in a fence. It will be somewhere in the region of 80 to 90% men. That is a higher percentage of men than in Western nations' active military. Why would fit 18 to 45-year-old men want to leave a country, whether in danger or not, without their families? Families leave countries in peril together. If they are not in immediate danger, then the migration is for purely economic reasons. In that case, the man would find a job remotely and the family leave together for a better life. As the migration of persecuted South Africans to the USA showed, if it is with genuine intent, then families immigrate together. At best, this results in a short-term offshoring of basic wage, pizza delivery or welfare payments from the UK. 2.8% of Somali's entire GDP is Somalians in the UK sending money home. At worst, and much more likely, it is crystal clear, this is no ordinary immigration of foreigners. By the widespread foreign flags, the angry protests of foreign disputes, the mass celebration of foreign events, and the self-selecting formation of ghettos, it is ethnic conquest. 9. Third world immigrants have a higher criminality. The crime of breaking into your country is usually the first of many, but a legal means of entry is no guarantee of good behaviour either. We see on screen the official stats for the US broken down by ethnicity. The chilling stat is clear. Blacks kill whites at 42.3 times the rate whites kill blacks. It's a similar story in Europe, this time looking at sex crimes. In the chart shown, the top 10 countries in terms of crime rates are all Sub-Saharan Africa and the Middle East. In summary, Afghan and Eritrean men are approximately 20 times more likely to commit a sexual offence than a native-born man. As per the Pakistani rape gang scandal, the Telegraph reported that Pakistanis were 4 times more likely to be found guilty of child sex grooming offences. That's even after the various evasion and covering up by authorities, including typexing out the ethnicity as part of the ongoing scandal. 10. The culture of lies and corruption engulfs our society. The high time preference traitors at the centre of this will hide the truth in their malfeasance until the day they die. Politicians pathologically lie about their intent to manage immigration. The media cheerleaders lie by omission about the effects. The objective of both was to make hay from the chaos, whether via money or power. Some do it via tenancy of their rental properties. More than 100 MPs in Britain make 2.6 million a year each doing so. Some in the media do it via a quid pro quo on lucrative contracts. The government is the UK's highest paying advertiser. Some do it by greasing the palms of industry leaders whose companies need cheap Deliveroo drivers, or whose billionaire friends prefer to run hotels with a guaranteed income model. 11. It is demographic replacement. Demographic displacement doesn't have to come in the form of physical removal of one's family. It can be to exact the conditions necessary to make life unlivable and unbearable. Different ethno-cultural groups in large enough numbers always form enclaves. These destroy social cohesion. The only reason that the political and media class ignore this is that they are firmly ensconced in their gated communities in the richer parts of London. Whitney Houston believed that the children were the future. From the liberal news site, Dem State, we see the truth on screen. From children to pensioners, the effects are vivid. Visit East Ham in London, or Bradford in the Midlands, or a multitude of other places up and down the country. Imagine a native-born, old lady's journey home in these areas, perhaps one of the few who hasn't been bullied from her home by daily intimidation. On her nerve-wracking tube journey home, adverts boast about diversity policies, side by side with warnings not to attack train staff. She walks through her unrecognisable neighbourhood where a once friendly high-trust culture has vanished, replaced by hooded youths, foreign languages and walking bin bags. Then she gets home, where the talking heads on her TV, all living in safe white areas, tell her none of it is happening. But the third world tide will engulf the cosmopolitan elite too, by which time they will eagerly anticipate our defence of their physical safety. Indeed, a ghettoised mix of South Africa and the Lebanon is coming for everyone, rich or poor, black or white, left-wing or normal. I fear even for the safety of the political and media class. In Stalinist Russia, even dutiful liberals got the redacted. 12. It endangers us more than a twin nuclear attack or a conventional war. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were both turned to rubble and thousands vaporised in the twin nuclear attack in 1945. A decade later, both were similar-sized cities and beacons of growth, and Japan's culture still remained intact. See the picture of Hiroshima, 1945 versus 2007. Dresden was firebombed by the Allied forces in 1945. In many respects, the incendiary bombardment was nuclear in its intensity and effects. Then Dresden and Germany recovered, and it was rebuilt a generation later, in the 60s, its culture intact. Mass, uncontrolled legal and illegal third world immigration is different. Multiple cities are invaded, incrementally and covertly, so a nation's people cannot wake itself up in time to recover. We, the ignored, the ones watching the horizons, have been trying to shake them awake for decades. As they sleep, they lose their culture and customs forever. For further illustration, consider the Aztecs. They were a distinctive civilization in Mexico up until the 16th century. The Spanish conquered, displaced, and outbred them. Now, they and their culture no longer exist. Their memory just a footnote in history. Their artifacts belong in museums. If photography existed, a Hiroshima-style picture of the Aztecs could only be before, not after. 13. In conventional warfare, people fight for their families and neighbours. With mass third world immigration, there is no cohesion, no camaraderie, no spirit of the Blitz, only erasure. Erasure of public trust, community, and shared history forever. Excluded reasons. Are there any more reasons of sufficient relevance? I can only think of one. If this was the early 1990s and you researched the downsides of mass immigration, you'd see it. The brain drain of the source country. But I have excluded that reason here for obvious reasons. We've reached the stage where, at best, the individual legal third world immigrant is an economic migrant with an incompatible worldview. Or if illegal, a chancer, looking for a paid adventure. At worst, the importing nations are emptying their prisons and sending their sexual predators. Either way, they're not sending their best. What is the solution? The solution, as mentioned in FutureDad 40, the West can only focus on secondary issues, are these steps, in order. 1. Deploy the Navy to defend our sovereignty, ending the military invasion immediately. 2. Stop processing any visas from third world or Muslim-dominated nations. Pause all legal migration until Britain becomes culturally harmonised, to be voted on by referendum in 2075. 3. Immediate repeal of ECHR HRA, both packed with positive human rights communism, and all extra governmental bodies operating in the UK, for example, WHO, UN, etc. 4. Immediate deportation of all persons illegally in Britain to country of origin or country of last known money transfer correspondence. If no country is found/declared, the criminal placed in a prison camp on an uninhabited British overseas island on basic rations until the country of origin is recalled and declared. 5. Criminalise the flying of foreign or political flags. Every government building and landmark to have one of the four nations of Britain alongside the Union Jack. 6. Ban the preparation and sale of all halal food as deliberate animal cruelty. Progressive fines to be issued, the proceeds of which go straight back into detection efforts. 7. Ban cousin marriage as a public health hazard. 8. Ban Sharia law as being unconscionable in a modern secular nation. 9. Ban the building of mosques, any currently under construction, to be halted, compensation given, and the land sold for recreational use only. 10. Immediate end to all non-citizen welfare. One-way flights to country of origin offered by way of compensation. 11. After 1 year, deport all non-citizens with a criminal record above a parking ticket. Provide one-way flights to country of origin. If no country is found or declared, the individual placed in a prison camp on an uninhabited British overseas island on basic rations until the country of origin is recalled and declared. 12. From year 2, cut all taxes by 10% a year until they reach 0%, placing a fixed 20% sales tax on all items and renegotiating tariffs. Progressively shutter all government departments apart from the military, police and judiciary to pay for it. 13. From year 5, progressively end all welfare via 10% per year budget cuts, compensation offered commensurate with recorded NI payments. The bigger the government, the smaller the man. Antithetical. If the source of immigration changed overnight and 1/4 of British population became Chinese, Japanese or Vietnamese, or Icelandic, Norwegian and Finnish, productive, law-abiding, respectful cultures, then it would be a massive improvement on the current apocalyptic third world dross we've imported. But it would still be a colossal mistake. Britain would no longer be Britain. Yet we've essentially done that, except with cultures completely antithetical to our own. Now, it is always virtuous to treat individuals on their own merit. That does not mask the fact that some cultures are different and inferior to others, in the main because of drastically different time preference, which has its roots in biology. We must take the measures listed above until the population of third world heritage reaches and stays in the low single figures %. Conclusion. We should no more want to replace even 10% of our native people with incompatible non-natives than we would want to replace 10% of our teeth with someone else's, 10% of our frogs with toxic cane toads, or 10% of our bees with Africanized killer bees. It is plain. Immigration must be controlled, minimal, and easily integrated, or it is a crime of treason by the state on its people. The punishment for this despicable, multi-decade criminal campaign against Britain's people will come in due course. Right now, we need action from everyone who cares about their family, their neighbourhoods and their country to stand up and say no. Withdraw your consent and minimise your taxes. By any peaceful means, become ungovernable. FutureDad.